Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to give you a quick rundown on domain names and web hosting, two services that any web developer is definitely going to need. So I got this question from a student several minutes ago. Is there info in this class for obtaining domain names, cost and payment for the domain names, and full web page development? And yeah, so let's address that. Now, for my class, CIS 195, any of the web development classes really at COCC, you do not need to worry about getting a domain name. You don't have to worry about getting web hosting. I'm going to provide that stuff to you. Each student is going to have some web hosting space, and they're going to have their own domain name, username, password, FTP access, things like that. So you'll be able to manage your class website projects as you go. So no need to expend any money while you're learning web development. That said, if you are certain that you're going to be making web pages beyond class, you're serious about making a website portfolio for yourself, or you're a business owner or a soon-to-be business owner and you know you're going to be doing the website there, then obviously you're going to move buying a domain name and web hosting higher on your list. And they are two separate things. Way back in the day, way back in the late 90s, you could only get a domain name from one place, and that was Internic. And that's where I got my first domain name. And I can't remember the cost, but it may have been something like 25 bucks a year, something like 35 bucks a year maybe. In the early 2000s, that got broken up, and now all kinds of companies can be domain registrars. A registrar is the company where you get a domain name from, and there's all kinds of them out there. GoDaddy is probably one of the most familiar because we see commercials for them when we're watching football and stuff. But GoDaddy is definitely not the only one. Now, there are also web hosting companies, and you used to get your domain from one place and your web hosting from another place. And that's changed quite a bit too over the past 10-15 years, because a lot of the web hosting companies now do domain registrations, and a lot of domain registrars are now also doing web hosting. For instance, you could buy a domain at GoDaddy and you can also host your website at GoDaddy. I use a company called Dreamhost, and I've used them for a long time, and I really do think they're great. I'll have a link and stuff for them down there in the video description. Let's just do a quick search real quick on DuckDuckGo. Best web hosting services, and we'll just look for something. Here's a buyer's guide, top 10, small business, PC magazine, best web hosting services. And HostGator. HostGator's been around for a long time. I see them pop up on these lists quite a bit. There's Dreamhost. They've been showing up for decades on these lists and things like that. So there's a ton out there. And they're all probably going to be pretty similarly priced. So let's break down some of these costs here. So I'm looking at the homepage for Dreamhost. That's the web hosting company I use. And now let's just scroll down to where their services are. And early on, when you're first making your first web pages and things like that, I would recommend you go for shared hosting. So basically, shared hosting is you've got dozens or hundreds of different users and people all on the same server, and you have your own little chunk of space. And shared hosting is going to be the most affordable. So you can see the shared hosting plan here is under $3 a month, so under 50 bucks a year. I'm sure you probably have to get a couple, 3 years at a time to get that price. So basically 50 bucks a year for shared hosting. And the web host is the server space where you're going to store your web page so that it has 24/7 access and people can go to your website online. So you need to have a web host in order to have a place to house your web page. But you also need a domain name or multiple domain names so that people can type in your domain name and go find your website, which is on the web host. So let's say we have 30, 40, 50 bucks a year for web hosting services. Notice they have all these WordPress options too. Most web hosts will have some kind of WordPress built-in because it's so popular. I use the generic shared hosting, but it can still do WordPress, but they have some that are custom to WordPress. All of the services probably will have some kind of WordPress one-click install kind of thing. So if you're pretty sure you're going to be going the WordPress route, just look on the web hosting features and see if they have something dedicated to that. Okay, but domain registration, that's the other expense. Remember, we're about 40, 50 bucks a year for hosting. Let's see, this company, Dreamhost, they're also doing domain registrations now. And you're going to see sale prices all the time. Let's look at .com domains. These sale prices are always going to be limited. So they've got a deal going here. .com's $7 for the first year, and then they go to about $15, $16 a year. $15, $16 is pretty standard. There's not a lot of price deviation in domain names for domain registrars. So not going to be a big savings there. However, many of them, I see deals at GoDaddy and stuff like that. And this company here, Dreamhost, they're doing specials, discounts for the first year, and that's for .com. And then you just have to find out if your .com domain name is available. michaeltstone.com. Let's see if michaeltstone.com. Perfect. I did a made-up name even with a middle initial, and that one's already taken too. So what you could do is you could look for a variation, and I look through here and I see miketstone.com is available and stuff like that. Okay, so let's assume you go by Mike. That's going to be $7 for the first year, but go ahead and factor in $15, $16 a year. So we've got about $15 a year for the domain name. That's an ongoing cost. And you've got about, let's say, $40 a year for the web hosting. That's going to be an ongoing cost. So basically for $55 a year, you've got yourself a significant presence online, which is going to allow you to make a full website. So you've got hosting and you've got a domain name, so you can start creating your web pages with scripts and style and things like that. Start to upload. You can build it up. You can do WordPress, and you can build up a really large website using that expense. So, and there we go. And if I was interested in that, then I would definitely click buy now. Now you can get your domain names from a different company than the web host. Perfectly reasonable thing to do. So you can buy a domain name at GoDaddy, and then you could web host it at Dreamhost or some similar company like that. And it's not a tricky process, but there's an extra step or two involved with putting in the DNS addresses at wherever your domain registrar is, but they tend to make that process pretty easy, so it's not a deal breaker. Lately, I've been getting domain names and my web hosting at the same place just for that one little smidgen of convenience. And you can get a domain name now and web hosting later. So it's okay to get a domain name, especially to try to reserve that domain name if you think you might use it a year or two from now. So at the very least, you could limit your expenses to just, let's say, $15 a year for that .com domain name, with the intentions of maybe a couple years later getting web hosting and developing a website. So you can get the domain name without web hosting. You can technically get web hosting without a domain name, although it wouldn't be very functional. But those are the two things you would need. And again, if you're a student in my class, no need to get that expense now. If you're serious about getting something because you're a small business owner, you're thinking about it, just hit me up via email and we can talk about some more specifics. So thanks for hanging out with me. Take care.